Good evening, citizens, and welcome to the Shattersong LARP Diaries. I'm your host, Chris, and unfortunately today I am not joined by my erstwhile friends, Matty and Sol, because they have a life. They're doing other stuff, it's very important, and instead you're stuck with me. So, to fill the void of course, Matty and Sol being away, but also the void of episodes that I've been releasing, I've been digging in the dark depths of the Shattersong archives, and I've got a little treat for you. It is not, I'm afraid, the E4 analysis that I know some of you are gagging for. It is, in fact, the E3 analysis from 2018. So, yeah, we're going to go 5 years back. I looked at the episode history on this podcast, and the earliest ones I've got are of Ban, hence the original name, the Ban Shattersong Diaries, but there's a character prior to Ban called Pieface. He only survived one event, very much a one-shot wonder, but he had a fantastic impact. And I've actually found the Hots&Nots document I wrote up on the way home. So I thought I'd share that with you, share a few stories about Pieface. We've alluded to him a couple of times, but I thought we might as well get the lowdown on the Pieface LARP Diaries. So here we go, half a decade in the history of Chris's characters. So I guess to set the scene, my first ever character was called Darren. He was just a generic fighter in Navarre, had a longsword and some medium armour, had a drink with his mates and went out on skirmishes and fights and didn't really do anything in Anvil. He got killed. He actually got killed the only time he did anything of note, which was getting the Barber Garak as part of the Vate Hunt. He then proceeded to die, I think, like 12 hours later. Something really embarrassing like that. It was not good. And anyway, Darren's dead, and I'm like, right, I need a new character for E3. So along comes Pieface. Pieface was again second ever LARP character. Didn't really have a purpose apart from let's get involved in some more stuff. And boy, oh boy, did that happen. So let's start with the I was going to start the knots because they're on the document, but actually I don't want to. Let's tell the positive story first before picking it apart, because it's also got some spoilers in there as well. And let's jump straight in with Friday. So the cool part of having a new character is that you get to reintroduce yourself to your friends, and if you're playing someone different, you get to prod the bear, so to speak, and see if there's stuff about them, but your character doesn't. So you get to rediscover things, or see if they even want to show up to you. And yeah, it was just really cool to have a cool and fresh start with Black Scar. At this point, I'm still playing with them. They were my first ever, and continue to be my main group. And yeah, it just felt really cool just to come in with like a fresh start and a fresh face, and maybe, just maybe, actually matter this time. And boy, did Pieface do that. So the first thing at most, so just post time in and post standing, is Thorns Council in Navarre. We elect our generals for the coming summit and the coming year really. And when asked if anyone wanted to stand, I felt my legs tense and power me up toward the sky. And all of a sudden I'm stood in front of maybe 60 people. You got to remember, back pre-COVID, Empire is a lot smaller as a LARP. It's still massive, don't get me wrong, but we're struggling to hit the 2k point of players. But I think it's all 2024. I think 3k should be easy. But regardless, lots of people. I have no idea what I want to do. I have no idea what to say. At this point I've only read a few things on the wiki, but I've fought in enough battles to turn an inspiring word, let's say, or speak passionately about Navarre, its military aims, and becoming a general. So I've written in block caps the mighty speech, and that apparently I absolutely smashed it. Unfortunately, that is not true, because Pieface was not made general. That went to Lou Taru, my friend Chris Melvin, as this was for General of the Blackthorns. I believe this is the first time he got it, and then he got a second season next time round as well, I think. But either way, didn't get Blackthorns, but the thrill of it, of standing up in front of people, winging it, and just not fucking it up, absolutely fantastic. And I think it's one of those things where, you know, it's one of my favourite quotes to drop on people, is that of the top 5 things that humans fear, death is at number 2, and public speaking is at number 1. So it's really scary, but actually once you're up there and you're in your role playing, you just get into it and you can go for a bit of a firebrand kind of speech, or you can talk about exterminating the forlorn, or about wanting to keep people alive. Just go with what comes to mind and totally wing it, and it will be so much better than you think it is. You're probably a lot more skilled than you imagine. Chris's positivity tip for the day. But anyway, at the end, people came up and said well spoken, got my hand shaken apparently. It was bloody brilliant. I still remember the feeling of it, but not what I said. And I absolutely loved it. It really got me addicted to doing some more public facing stuff at LARP. It also felt really good to stir things up, because I showed up and I think I got 9 votes. I went out of 60 people. That's not bad. I really don't think that's bad. My brain is telling me that I came second. I don't think that's true, but you know, I was a serious contender. I wasn't sat there with just 1 vote. That did happen later on when I stood for Senator for Thurunin, I think, and I got 0 votes. That was great. That was Travid will appreciate that. That was much more recent, but yeah, the general's election was a lot of fun, and this is only a couple hours its time in. So what's going to happen next? Next up, we have the Scouts. The Scouts have been around in Navarre for a long time, and they have changed dramatically in the last couple of years. The previous Scouts, I think, to be fair to them, they're relatively new as an organisation, or the leadership had changed again. And in fact, that's what we were doing in this instance. We were voting for a new Scout leader, and apparently I let my meaner side out, and it felt great to be an arse. Sorry to whoever was standing then, but I think I was leaning into being a bit more of a dastardly character. We all know where that went. The next couple, but just dropping some difficult questions on the Scout leader, and it wasn't like, "Hi, I've heard your shit, please defend yourself." It was more a case of, "Oh, I've heard your casualty rates are very high. How do you intend to address that?" Or, the Imperial marshals and the generals don't have a seat for you at the military council. How are you actually going to matter to the higher echelons of Imperial command? For example, things that everyone would hate to be asked when they're standing up and doing some public speaking, eh? I think one line was, "The only thing worse than the Imperial budget is the casualty rate for Navarre Scouts," because it really was. It was diabolical at this point in 2018. It was 70-80% per event, because it was a group of maybe 10 to 15 people. But most of them would die across the event. Their recruitment drives were very effective for getting new players in, and it was an awesome bit of RP, and it still is nowadays. With the added bonus of nowadays you can survive your first event, but back then it was just a meat grinder. So yeah, I think it was actually we've got a friend called Tiki and Black Scar, and his older brother, who doesn't play anymore, was actually going for the election, and I think he won. So he got to have an event or two before He actually went off and had a baby. Congratulations. And got to lead the scouts, but the casualty rate did not get better. We just got fucking killed every single time we deployed. Great fun though. Great fun. Final point on the Friday is that as part of being a new character and actually trying Empire, because I strongly stand by Empire being one of the better systems out there, if you're willing to put something in. Plot will never come to you, activities will never ever really come to you. But if you go and poke stuff, it is incredible how easy it is to get involved in stuff. And anyway, I did this with selling. So I can't even remember what resource. I just went out and did some trading. And it was a lot of fun. For those of you who don't know, selling and being in sales is my day job, and it has been for quite a while. So, this was... I was originally opposed to it because I didn't want to do my day job at my holiday time. But actually, the transferable skills, to use that buzzword, were very much applicable here. And I ended up having enough beer money to enjoy myself without begging or borrowing from people or having to do stupid shit or having to... I say this with a tinge of shame, but I shouldn't because it totally works, is the morning after, Saturday morning and Sunday morning, go around where the pubs are and all the bars. The odds of finding crown and 5-ring coins in the grass are like 95% plus. You'll scrape together a crown or two maybe, but it only takes 5-10 minutes, and boom, you've got yourself beer money for the rest of the evening. So yeah, did that originally, but didn't need to do it this time because of trading. Very fun. And then did the usual thing, went back to Black Scar and had some drinks with everybody and just got excited about the battle in the morning. So, that brings us to Saturday. First line here, monstering was wicked. We mashed up some Wintermark in the forest after getting our arses handed to us on the field. I have no idea what territory we were in. I think we were playing as Jotun, I would imagine. This is sort of the beginning of the we're always fighting Jotun phase of the Empire. It was just the beginning of the Imperial War with them that kicked off in 380, 381, whenever it was. And back then it was lovely and fresh. So playing sort of elite, proud, noble, honourable orcs in a big stonky line fight and battering the crap out of each other, that was really fun. That was new and exciting back then. Maybe less so now. But at this point, I had my first ever LARP weapon I bought was a longsword. I do a bit of HEMA. I did a bit of HEMA back at uni. That's been a long time, and just using that at LARP was a lot of fun. And doing the whole Landsknecht sort of Zweihander thing of keeping a few people at bay in a chokehold, in a choke point in the forest. Really fun. Apparently felt satisfying. And from these notes, it looks like I went toe to toe with Iron Tide Lock back then and didn't die. So that is glowing praise for Iron Tide Lock's player, is that half a decade ago you scared the shit out of me. So, good battle. It was one of those, I only vaguely remember it, but it's one of those battles where it had distinct parts to it. It wasn't just a grind, it's over. It was very much a case of the field was, because there's less players at this point as well, fighting on the main field. There isn't just two walls hitting each other. There's actually a lot of dynamic movement and flanking, as still big units of 30 to 40 people, but there's only 4 or 5 of them on each side, so manoeuvring really matters. And then once we got into the woods, the Imperial cohesion broke apart, and then we started to rip and tear, so to speak. So yeah, good battle, got off that, and I walked straight into the Marches Fair. So at this point I'd been LARPing for about 2 years, and like I said at the start, I hadn't really done too much. The Navarre the Navarre Forest I hadn't really ventured out of. I didn't really know people other than the university and local friends that I brought with me. And I had no reason to go to Varushka, Marches, Dawn, X, Y, or Z, right? However, this is the first time I came across the Marches proper, and they were having their fair. So what an introduction to the Marches themselves. And apparently, again, I absolutely loved it. It was a gem of Empire culture. There was apple bobbing, sponge throwing, and cake eating. And that kept me busy all afternoon. I distinctly remember there was a competition of hitting a nail into a piece of wood, and you had to do it in one strike. So you had to aim very carefully, but hit it hard enough to go in. And that was a very cool, very, very, very cool game of skill. Was not very good at it, but that had a lot of us. It was just one ring a go, and yeah, surprising amount of fun. I don't remember. I think the cake eating was an individual activity. I don't remember a cake eating competition. Although Marches, if you are listening, I'm just saying, cake eating competition would be banging. Apple bobbing and sponge throwing. Oh, that was it. It was actually quite hot as well. This was E3, so this is July. Yeah, this is July. So apple bobbing. Oh my god, wonderful. Dunking, like the water was crisp and cold, and you obviously got to keep the apple as well. So yeah, I've got a smile on my face. Really, really, really enjoyed that. Next up, we get to go on the first skirmish as Pie-Faced, and this is Pie-Face, and this is awesome because we're going straight into the Atherton, which is like the big deal for Black Scar at this point, especially with Lou Teru having just been elected general. That was his shtick, and it always has been up until recently in 2023. And this was like, oh, here we go. Here's our big plot fight. We're ready for it. We also get to go on as a full group, because back then, skirmishes were around about 70 people usually. Sometimes they were only 40. No, sorry, they weren't 70. They were more like 40. But again, because there were fewer players, there were loads more skirmishes and loads more spaces as well to go on them. This was also the first time I got to use a ranged weapon, because I picked up a crossbow from a lovely guy who now plays. Unfortunately, a guy called Warbeast in our crew. He's now moved on to the Imperial Orcs, but he was getting rid of his crossbow. And it was one of those spur of the moment things of, hey, that's a gun, let's grab it, shall we? So I've got exactly two bolts to go with it as well. That's all I could actually find from the traders, because crossbow bolts weren't that popular at this point. And yeah, we effectively went in as a battle line and did our shock unit tactics and pushed them back. There was a mix of orcs and of Valorn, but it was mainly Valorn. In fact, actually, I'm reading this now. Realistically, they were probably just orcs that had been possessed by the Valorn. So they, the usual slaughter of of plant life in the forest, until a disgusting, dirty pack of Etacaps show up. Now these were monsters back in the day. I feel old saying that. Back 5 years ago, monster suits like drakes, Etacaps, minotaurs, colossi, and stuff like that. They were really quite common, and they really mattered. I think they stopped them over COVID because hot, sweaty suit is a hotbed for infection. But also, as battles got bigger, they usually would just get swamped and panel beaten, and they didn't have as much of an effect. That's just my personal opinion. I don't actually know the reason. And in good local and modern news, they are bringing back monster suits for some of the battles. Like we did have a Minotaur at the end of 2023. But we'll cover that in another episode, shall we? But anyway, my point being, a whole pack of Eticaps show up, which are these sort of humanoid beetles. But they're not stupid like Forlorn, where they'll just walk and hit you and go nom nom nom. They have human intelligence, so they'll flank and they'll click and they'll like do terror attacks. They'll bait, they'll drag injured, obviously not literally dragging, but they'll pull injured Imperials away and then start snipping them in the woodlands. So we literally had people getting full on like predator grabbed in the jungle and being dragged off into the bracken by these giant fucking beetles, and they were really tough as well. It's basically full suit of heavy armor, immune to impales and stuff like that. And yeah, they were really scary, and they were quick. So at one point when I'd fired my 2 bolts, ran forward to get them from the forlorn torso that they're embedded in, I remember Tadpole yelling, "Pie face, look out!" I look to my right and scream as this fast-moving purple blur comes for me at Mach 6. Absolutely clattering me to the floor and ripping me apart, and it's just cleave, 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 cleave from the monster crew. And I'm like, I'm not even wearing armor because I'm using a bow, a crossbow. And yeah, I just drop down, and it's a spicy couple of minutes, very, very close couple of minutes, until they actually come and get me. I think I was literally about 10 seconds off my bleed count when when they finally got to me. But yeah, Eticaps, really scary, but shooting forlorn, lots of fun. We came out apparently to chest bumps and cheering, and the atmosphere couldn't have been better. I think it was a crushing victory for the Imperials, if you can think of it like that, with the forlorn. We achieved our objective, cast a spell, blah blah blah, whatever it was, I don't remember. All that matters is there were some really cool deaths of people getting dragged off, but also getting some cool kills and some really good teamwork from Black Scar. However, post skirmish, there was some angst, and look who it is. It was with the Scouts. We had I think the allegation was that we'd just left some of the Scouts to get killed and dragged off, and that is almost certainly true. Black Scar probably did. The reason being that the Scouts, like I alluded to earlier, the Scouts at this point took high casualties, and that's because they often operated on their own, maybe as a pair sometimes. And they would, lightly armoured daggers, like a pair of daggers or a pair of swords, that kind of thing. And Eticaps would just go up, cleave, they'd drop, and then snack on them in the woods. And basically we got there. So some of the Scouts came over and had a verbal altercation. I've written down here. And it was at... That was it. It was at the new captain. Sorry, it wasn't at... When I say us, it wasn't Black Scar. It was actually at the new captain. So this was Tiki's older brother. And this was some really good adversarial roleplay where I got to vehemently defend him and sort of tell... I feel sorry for these Scouts, actually, because they just lost their friends. But telling them that their friends' deaths was their own fault. And if they stuck as a unit and were more careful, they wouldn't have died. And also, ultimately, when serving in the Empire's military, you do put your life on the line, and the taxman came collecting. Very cool argument. My first ever IC argument as well. First ever bit of adversarial roleplay ever that wasn't a sword fight, if you will, at Empire. Very cool, very enjoyable. So somehow, through bolt retrieving shenanigans and standing for general and suddenly being a face that's recognisable in the VAR, there's a skirmish going out, and Pieface is asked if he wants to lead it, which I found very surprising. Again, proves my earlier point that if you poke, even just gently at Empire, it will embrace you back. So I get to lead the skirmish, and it's going to the Black Plateau. Those of you who know the story from Sol and I telling it in some previous episodes, you'll know what's coming next. But oh boy, if you don't remember that, dear listeners, you're in for a treat. So the Black Plateau is a cursed piece of land, a cursed piece of territory in Urizen, and it makes anyone within it go mad, go insane. They'll start attacking their friends and foe alike. They'll start having extreme nightmares, and basically because the Imperial armies had been fighting over this with the Druge and the Grendel for so long, I think it was just Grendel actually, it had awoken the Black Plateau, so those effects, rather than being local, pretty much became territory-wide, and it really, really got out of control. So we were sent on a skirmish to retrieve a researcher who had been researching the plateau and escort them back to Anvil. The problem being that a bunch of Grendel had found this researcher, and it was a race against time to rescue them. Very cool mission. All of that said, the first line I've written here is, "Oh boy, was this a mess." This was my first ever IC command, so I put a lot of prep into it, but I'm still pretty green at this point. I've been fighting as a grunt for a couple of years at Anvil, but I've never had any kind of unit leadership, and I've never really paid attention to it either. So putting myself into command with people I didn't really know as well. We had some people from Blackscar there, but it was sort of like a 60-40, because I got to pick the actual troop going through. But at this point, there's only like 15 Blackscar, so even with all of them, which we didn't have, we couldn't fill the whole contingent. So we get a ragtag bunch to go through. I don't know anything about balancing out shields and spears and bows, or going to certain Thornborns to fill out certain tasks, that kind of thing. Whatever. I just go, yep, you're all in. Thank you for the bribes from a couple of you. I do remember you. And we go on this really cool skirmish to the Black Plateau. It is 9 PM at night, so it's starting to get real gloomy, real quick. And on top of that, there's a little bit of rain. And as I confidently walk through the gate with the company, we're stopped, we're pulled aside, and told that you're all under a role-playing effect. You can use a hero point to ignore it, or you can execute fallen comrades to regain hero points. And you can execute fallen comrades, or bleeding out Imperials, to regain hero points. The other part of the effect was that you feel that every slight is now a huge insult, and that the only way to resolve issues and disagreements is with violence. So it's basically turn on yourselves and rip each other apart. And we all just start smiling, and we look at each other. There's a few gasps of disbelief, and a few like oh my kind of responses. And everyone of course looks at me because who is this guy? Who the fuck is Pieface? Why the fuck is he in charge? And people aren't happy with that, especially when we had Neve, who's a captain of Blackscar, with us leading the Blackscar contingent. But there was a clear underlying feeling that someone much more experienced should be in charge, and oh boy, was this about to spill over. So we all get our lammies, we go in, and it's just starting to increase in intensity in terms of the rain. Pieface tries to get people like rallied and into like groups and spread out into the woodlands, but everyone just runs off screaming. Like literally, they just scatter into the woods, never to be seen again. That is true for some of them actually. And Blackscar themselves turn on me in a horseshoe, and some of them are actually chomping at the bit. They're frothing. There's some very angry shouting. I have to use my hero point. The only one I've got left to sort of like try and calm down and try and persuade them to keep fighting. And it's a very tense moment where Neve has her knife to my throat, and she is giving me my final warning, and if anything is to go wrong, I'm going to be the first one to pay for it. very cool bit of adversarial roleplay, and only only a few hours after the first. So anyway, we go in, and there's latent screaming in the woods, is all I can say. Some of this is pain, some of this is like, violent howling, but we can't see anything. It's quite a hot day, so there's a bit of like sort of mist and like sort of vapor coming up from all the rain. It's getting a little bit dark as well. Visibility's not great, and it's just at this point a ref comes over to me and says, "Oh, mate, your crossbow, it's just gone past the threshold. So let's say your string has snapped, and you need to use another weapon." And I was like, "Oh shit." Loudly announcing that my bowstring has snapped and switching to my butter knife. So I'm now sat there with a small dagger and the tunic upon my back with a murderous gang of ad hoc mercenaries trying to find one person in this entire woodland whilst being hunted by insane Grendel, all whilst trying not to get stabbed in the back. Quite the position to be in. So we actually made, I'd say, a good good approach into the woods. We walked down the central path. Those of you who've been on the site, you'll know this. It was a lot more overgrown back in the day, so it's very tight, about 3 or 4 people wide. And it is at this point when we come into the glade where we're ambushed. So 3 Grendel left, 3 Grendel right. There's not many, but enough to totally panic us, draw us out. And some people charge forwards to engage them because they're under the Black Plateau. Some people hold order. Then others start chasing them off into the woods. And these Grendel know what they're doing. They're baiting people back and killing them off in singles or pairs. So I'm frantically yelling, trying to get everyone on side. It's not working. Bluntly, it's not working. And then after maybe about what feels like 4 hours of chaos, but it's probably 30 seconds. I think the name of the NPC was Larry Sweetwater, and they were the NPC that we had been sent to rescue. Larry is on the floor being hacked apart by Grendel about 20 meters to our front. So at this point, Pieface / Chris, forgetting that he's in charge, just runs off and says, "Come on, let's go," pulling 5 or 6 people with me, leaving the others just milling around doing nothing. So we go off in our small little squad. We sort of send the send the Grendel on their merry way over the Howling Abyss. Grab Larry. There's a letter that we get. I think I've still got that in a box actually. It's some really cool research notes on the Black Plateau, and then a couple of our erstwhile friends, not Matty and Sol at this point. Although they were, I think Sol was there on the skirmish. They escort Larry out. And that's it, like mission accomplished. And it's only taken about 5 or 6 minutes. Surprisingly quick, and I thought, great, this is easy. Now we just need to leave. And it's this point I start turning around and realising that we're basically alone in this woods. And some of the screaming has stopped. And there are new screams beginning as well. So we're all bellowing, trying to rally people, getting them back to us, and in dribs and drabs, some of them do. Also, because we're being so loud, the Grendel hear that we're trying to rally, and then of course they start to congregate on us as well. So there's more of them at this point. There's a lot more of them than us. It certainly feels like, and they probably finished killing off the scouts in the bracken, and now they're coming back for us. And this desperate fight ensues. And I sort of stagger back after trying to just ward off people with my butter knife. Turn to Neve. Neve is in tears and goes, "This is all your fault," and stabs me in the belly with her spear. Thanks, Black Plateau. Unfortunately, I'd already been hit at this point, so that was my last hit point, and I just drop to the floor. And there's it's burned into my retinas. The Neve's eyes changing from like RP rage, which is great, to OC realization that was a mistake. She was only intending just to wound me or disprove a point. but of course didn't take into account I was on my last one. So I drop and start bleeding out, and then shit hits the fan. The skies open, the rain thunders down, visibility drops to about 15 meters, and one of the physics patches me up, and in the 20 or 30 seconds that took, everything has gone wrong. We're in full rout. We are running for our lives. Aaron, my roommate Aaron, his character, I think Damon at this point, is just lying there in further back in the glade, just unmoving. He's dead. He's gone. And there's a single beam of light illuminating his body, and the rest is gloom. And it was the most perfect image. It was like something out of a D&D source book. Lying there with a shield on his chest, hands limp and eyes shut. Tadpole is crawling towards me with a pear Grendel tickling him. And by tickling, I mean using machetes to hack off his legs. And he is wailing and reaching for us, begging to be rescued. We're all panicking. And at this point in history, I don't think Black Scar had a Cheez-It call. But this was certainly the time for it. So we just start to run. Somehow, I think, because some of the other elements that we had scattered at the start of the skirmish, they came back and actually rescued Tadpole. We fought a little bit of a fighting retreat, but to call it organised would be wrong. It was individual warriors fighting individual battles, all trying to survive the onslaught. And as we get out the gate, we've lost quite a lot of people. I think it wasn't very many of us that went in, actually. I might have been wrong at the start. It was about, I think, 15 in total. 15 people went on, and about 8 of them were Black Scar, and the rest were sort of Navarre or Scouts, that kind of thing. I think it was an entirely Navarre skirmish, but they were dead. We had 5, 6 dead on that skirmish. Like some really, percentage-wise, some really worrying stats. And most of them were Scouts. Again, the only thing worse than the Imperial budget is the Scout casualty rate. We get out the gate, and at this point, we go from RP to going, oh my god, that was amazing. And everyone's like, wow, that was absolutely wild, smiles all round, really, really cool battle. Absolute clusterfuck, but it was cool. It wasn't, getting steamrolled by a Jotun shield wall and, oh, that's it, you're dead. It was a very thematic running battle, and it felt very dramatic. But the drama was not over yet. As we get pushed out the Sentinel Gate on the other side, we are given a Lammy. We are now cursed from the visiting the Black Plateau. It's not just a role-playing effect anymore. We have a full-on curse on us. And we have no idea how to fix it, but we don't care, because the roleplay effect is rage, fucking rage. I paraphrase, of course. And as we stagger out into this deluge, this torrential downpour, the rest of Black Scar circle Pie Face. And some of the best, even better than the chaos literally a minute ago, even better than that chaos was this muddy, shrieking fist fight that kicked off as every single member did the whole Meeseeks pointing at each other thing, or Spider-Man meme, and then they just laid into each other. I remember taking a knife to the guts, someone was using a warhammer and just went clatter into somebody else, and this brawl kicks off. And this is back before, I think, sort of brawl, it's like hand-to-hand brawling, like make pretend fighting. I think that's banned now in Anvil. I don't think there's rules in there anymore for it. Or you have to get a ref and it has to be carefully controlled, like in the Orc Fighting Pit. But back then it was roleplay. Just follow the rules and don't hurt anybody. So people are like shield slamming, pretending to slap someone with a shield, or they're like sort of having the knife like above the chest, like in Saving Private Ryan. The hospital, of course, empties itself of physics as they come and try and understand what's going on. I think Ross who is a legend within Black Scar, unfortunately no longer attends Anvil, Ross turns around and just impales one of the physics just on the spot with a great sword and just cuts him in half. And then that's the moment the tension snaps. So the Highborn come over and they start laying into us as well. The physics are running off. Some of our gang have slipped through the net and they escape into Anvil. More on that later. But we're all over the course of a 5 to 10 minute running battle in Anvil in the rain. We're eventually apprehended and they start trying to cure us of this curse. Long story short, there is no cure. The cure in the Lammy, well, there wasn't one. There was just you can treat this with X, but there's no removing it. And we had like the High Exorcist coming over, and we all got sort of shackled and put into a tent in Urizen, and they spent a while trying to calm us down. I think I actually had some really cool roleplay with Amero around the Urizen Hearth magic, and trying to fix this, trying to calm us down, and it calmed us down in terms of roleplay, but it did not remove the curse. At least, not for those in the tent. For you see, a couple of erstwhile friends, who I believe were Matty and Sol, had managed to escape the net of highborn cataphracts, and they were now at large in Anvil. They had gone back to camp, told the rest of Black Scar what had happened, and in the meantime I'd been cured, in air quotes, and sent on my merry way home. And as Songs and Stories is in full swing, I am accosted by a gang of Black Scar mercs, and they cut Pieface down in the woods. They go, "Oi, Pieface, fuck you," and start stabbing him in a frenzy that leaves him on the floor and bleeding out. Songs and Stories comes to a skidding halt. I know we've broken the sacred rule of Songs and Stories. Don't interrupt it. But we'd done that. Now they come over. This is when Kjartan was alive, so Kjartan sort of wades in, blade in hand, trying to calm things down. To which the response of the cursed was, "Bring it." Kjartan goes, "Okay," and proceeds to start cutting off legs. So there's all these legless, incapacitated Black Scar and myself around. There's a few random citizens who've been caught up in the violence. I think, honestly, some people just started stabbing each other because they could. This is about a 50-person brawl. This ends a few minutes later, and then the physics come in, and the mages start sort of paralysing people just to slow it down. And what's even better is myself and my mate called Nick we're both cursed, we're both down, and we're trying to be we're trying to be tended to by the physics next to us. And as soon as we're back up to 1 HP, the knives that we're still armed with, we just go straight for the physics again. So those two go down, they drop in the mud, and everyone turns, shock Pikachu face of what the hell has just happened. Then me and Nick are rolling around in the mud with knives again. The two physics are like, slashed throats and stabbed kidneys. Sort of, more physics. Run to the scene to try and stabilise things. And of course, at this point, the militia show up after the crimes have been committed. I say that's a bit unfair. The militia can't preempt crime, but they were slow to respond because this is about 10-15 minutes in at this point. But anyway, Nick and I get hauled off to the hub where we spend, no word of a lie, dear citizens, we spend 30 minutes with an orc sat on both of our respective backs, because when they tried to restrain us, we just broke out. And then when we were lying on the floor holding our limbs, we would worm towards them, towards each other, spitting and, well, I say spitting, we were sort of biting tufts of grass out and spitting them at each other, or we'd, just worm towards each other and try and grab each other to sink a knife into each other's hearts. Very, very fun. Orcs were literally just sat on us. I'm saying all of this now, and I'm like, would this fly in 2023 Empire? It probably wouldn't go as extreme, I don't think. At least this section in the hub. But back then, great role play. Of course, everyone's consenting to this. It's me and Nick trying to get at each other, and we're both relatively strong people, so having 4 or 5 Imperial Orcs just sat on us wasn't actually painful in any way. We were absolutely fine physically. But just trying to wiggle towards each other, or pretending to be calm and then slowly shifting our weight and getting towards each other, then bolting like a pair of cats fighting. This scene took like an hour and a half before we were cleared of any crimes, despite, during our absolute sham trials, actively assaulting each other. We were found not guilty of assault because we were cursed, and we were basically taken to the, I think the War Mage or someone senior from Conclave, where they basically cast a different spell on us. It had a very strong RP effect of chilling us the fuck out. So that worked. But we were still cursed. But it's late at night at this point, and, well, it's time for drinking in bed and going a bit OC and talking about just how fucking cool that whole thing was. That ends Saturday, and Sunday is very brief, dear citizens, because what happens is, whilst the Black Plateau skirmish was on Saturday, the Sunday battle, of which we are Imperials, is also in a Black Plateau. And for the first time ever, I experienced an Empire battle that doesn't have Orcs as the opponent. It was actually other Imperials, and because it was so fucking hot, I think this was a real blessing, because having Orc masks on in the heat is a nightmare. And what we got to fight instead was insane Imperial soldiers, so it was literally just, the Marchers and Wintermark coming at us, and they had sort of black crosses on their foreheads sometimes to make it clearer, but most of the time they would just giggle insanely and run at us in hordes. Very, sort of Walking Dead or 28 Days Later, or even The Last of Us kind of style, or World War Z, whatever you want to think of, that horde mentality. And I remember a soldier that looks surprisingly like Whitecap jumping over a log, landing, going and starting to just wildly flail with a falchion and sort of pushing some Navarre back before a bunch of others sort of staggered over the log and then just rushed us. And they died in their droves, but they kept coming back and coming back. I think the Imperials took a lot of casualties that day, not only because we're killing our own troops, but also for the heroes taking the field as their heroes, as their anvil characters, purely because the monsters were so aggressive. They just came at us in hordes and hordes and hordes, and it was just the amount of unsettling sprinting. There was no unit cohesion, but it was just the fast ones hit you first, then the mediums, and then like a block or a blob of people would show up at the end and mop us up. And it was really rough. And it was this exact roughness that led to the felling of Pieface. He ran behind a line of the insane Imperials, the enemy, got a couple of them down, and then because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, the Imperials thought he was also insane, cut him down, and then executed him. And thus, the life of Pieface was snuffed out in a mere weekend. But honestly, as this episode rolls on to 48 minutes and 24 seconds now, absolutely loved it. Highest highs, lowest lows, pure unrelenting drama for 48 hours on the field of Anvil. So those are my hots. And also, I would say a little story, but it's actually a massive story. But let's talk about the knots. The first one is dying, and that's why I didn't cover the knots at the start. It did suck to die as the character I was suddenly getting really into. Like, oh, I've got command and failure, and it's kind of incompetent. Now I've got like a long-term curse. Oh, by the way, every single Imperial on the field had the same curse on them for that day. So it was just imagine our little rain skirmish. Multiply that by 100. But dying was crap because it was like an Imperial doing it, and I have no idea who this person was, but it wasn't the it wasn't the most roleplay intensive execution. It was a battlefield execution, and I can understand from their point of view. They're an Imperial, just put the monster down and move on. But I was screaming. Yeah, to be fair, actually, thinking about it, I can totally understand why they did it, because I was screaming, don't kill me, I'm Imperial, I swear, please don't kill me. Then they, of course, a monster would say that under the Curse of the Black Plateau. So, you know what? Fair play to them. But either way, it was a very sharp and sudden end to a character I was becoming rapidly attached to. I also forgot that I had Relentless as a skill. The first time I'd taken it. I actually could have just got up and walked off, rather than lying there waiting to die. Very sad. I also got a bit wet, because like rolling around on the ground and stuff on the Saturday and the Sunday as well. It was hot, but there was lots of rain overnight. So it got very sludgy, and no one likes wet kit. And the final thing is I just bought a really cool little potion pouch, and during the what can only be described as a 45-minute scrum in the hub on Saturday night, that was lost, and I have not found it since, to this day. So rest in peace, potion pouch. Rest in peace. That brings me to the end of this episode and the story around E3 2018. I do hope you enjoyed it. And if you go to the death page on the Empire LARP wiki, I'm actually just going to search it now, because I think it's maybe about 3 images down. You can see Pieface for yourself, because I'm pretty sure it's Beth Duna, but let me have a look. Oh, it's under the dying page. There we go. Combat section dying. Yeah, there he is. Yeah, he's the image directly to the right of the dying section on the combat page of the wiki. He's got a dagger in his neck and an arrow in his belly, because as the monsters walked past me, they just started sticking weapons in me. So that is Noble Pieface. Dead, dying, and gone from this world. So there you have it, citizens. There you have it. A little blast from the past. Hopefully this will keep you partially satiated until we finally get around to E4. We're going to release that. And when I say E4, I mean E4 of 2023. We are going to release that just before E1 of 2024, just to get people back in the mood and get us back in the mood and the juices flowing for, effectively for getting us hyped for LARP again. I am going to be at Watch the Game this weekend, so if you do attend and see me, say hi. I'm always happy to talk to people. And finally, a big thank you to everyone who continues to listen to this. It's gotten kind of big. Well, I say kind of big, like relatively big now. There are some podcasts, like the BBC podcast, for example, with fewer listeners and fewer total listens than this, which is surprising, considering this was literally done as a totally amateur project. It will remain an amateur project, and it will never, ever, ever become serious. I've had a couple of like random companies, like audio producers, audio hardware producers reach out for sponsorships and stuff. I don't think we're going to do that ever, because I can't seriously represent any. I don't think anyone should seriously let me represent their brand when I'm sat here talking about fist fighting in the mud with an orc on my back, or genuinely shit talking about the Scouts, which seems to be one of the themes for this episode. But yeah, we've got a lot of listeners now in America, Canada, a handful in Japan as well. I think I know who you are. Thank you for listening. It's good to see you earlier this year. And of course, all of you in the UK who are local to this, if you want to come to Empire and try it out, there's a discount code in the sort of like channel description for the Shatsong LARP Diaries. Please feel free to use it. You get a discount on turning up. It's like 15 quid. And quite frankly, LARP is a hobby that changed my life, very much for the better, and hopefully it can do the same for you too. But until then, dear citizens, whether you find yourself tucked up in a cosy home or adventuring the trods in the cold, cold winter ahead of us, enjoy yourselves and remember to be ever vigilant.